So today we have one of the most iconic cars of my generation. But what are those rear seats like? And also, are these really worth the crazy values that they fetch today? Let's find out. My name's Ben, and welcome to Dadcars. Right, girls, this is the game that me and your uncle used to play all the time when we were little. And let me show you what our favourite car was. You ready?
Wow.
The Mk4 Supra. Look at it. How incredible is that? Do you want to drive the Supra?
Why are we driving it? We've got one on the driveway.
We do have one on the driveway, don't we? God, what a dream. Right, let's go see if we can get some child seats on the back, shall we? Right, what's it like getting in the back? So I've actually got fairly high expectations for this Supra because the Celica GT4 JM's one that I featured on the channel, it really shocked me because the rear seats in that Celica are very usable for adults. I had plenty of headroom and just had to slump down a little bit, and legroom was good, but it looks a lot tighter back here than in the Celica. What a shock. Yeah, look at this. I haven't got enough headroom. I have to hunch forward, and the legroom is a proper tight squeeze. So headroom similar to a Camaro, like the ZL1 that I featured on the channel, and yeah, legroom is Aston Martin DB9 squeezy. So with teenage children and adults, you are going to be quite restricted with these rear seats. You know, you could go 15 minutes somewhere with people in the back hunched over, feeling quite uncomfortable. But what about child seats? Right, so I have technically been able to get a rear-facing baby seat in here, belt secured, obviously no ISOFIX. There's the tiniest amount of space between this and the passenger side and front, and there's very minimal adjustments, so I can't actually bring this forward even at the sacrifice of using this seat. And these travel child seats, which have sadly been discontinued, which fit in the back of the Celica GT4 really well, they're not going to work in here because look, it's a similar problem as you get with 911s. Because the seatbelt is here, if you clicked it in, there's going to be this huge void. So belt secure child seats in the back of a Supra is going to be very hard. I've tried several belt secure child seats in the back, and because of the arrangement of these seat belts, they don't fit. So the only one that I'm actually happy that, you know, it fits with these seat belts is this folding travel booster seat. So I'm going to take my 6-year-old out in this car. So the huge shocker, the bombshell for me, I really wanted a Supra as a dad car, you know, just to own one and tick one off. But if you want to live the 90s JDM dream, the Celica GT4 is a far better dad car. Those rear seats are a lot better than these. I think it's a similar story with the boot, because I was able to climb into the boot and shut the lid in the Celica, but there's no way I'm going to be able to climb in and shut the boot on me here. But look, I've got a folding buggy and my camera bag in there, so I mean it's a big space, but it's just very shallow. You know, I reckon you might be able to squeeze through there without even putting the seat forward. What do you think? Well, that's quite impressive, isn't it? Look, I'm sure there must be child seats that fit in the back of here quite well. If anyone uses any, or a particular child seat, please let us know in the comments below. Now, technically, this isn't the first time that I've driven a Supra, because my brother, in his early 20s, he had a Mk4 Supra, and before I passed my driver's test, he let me drive it around a car park, a private car park, obviously.
That's my uncle.
And that's your Uncle Jordan, isn't it? Now, when you're talking about a Supra, sweetie, there's two things that you want. You want a manual gearbox, and you want it to be turbocharged. So this car that I'm driving here today has one of those things. It's got a manual gearbox, so it's a naturally aspirated manual. We went to the shops in this earlier, didn't we, sweetie? We parked it in parent and child parking. Honestly, seeing a Mk4 Supra parked in a parent and child space makes me happier than I can ever explain. Oh, there we go. That's the first time I've clicked the windscreen wipers already. I have owned 90s JDM cars in the past, but over 10 years ago. Oh, look, we're coming up to some speed bumps here. This will be interesting.
What again?
Speed bumps on the road. Yeah, oh yeah, no, we haven't knocked anything. That's good. I'm really interested to see if this naturally aspirated Supra with 220 horsepower, if it still packs enough punch to feel special. And speaking of special, what do you think of the interior in this car, sweetie?
Yeah.
I think this is as magical as an interior gets in a car. this incredible wraparound cockpit style, fighter jet style dash is iconic and just amazing. And it's just a smell of 90s JDM cars. Every single time I sit in one, there's obviously subconscious, incredible memories that have been associated with this smell. Because me and all my friends, we loved 90s JDM cars. My first sports car ever was a Mk4 MR2, and still to this day, that's the best car I've ever owned. I love that car so much. Right, so we have a little bit of acceleration, sweetie, yeah? What do you reckon?
Yeah.
Second gear up to 40. Look, it's definitely no slouch, is it? It's got a nice bit of performance there. It's the instant response, you know, the throttle response is lovely, really tactile, really nice to use. Obviously what you don't get is, you know, after a couple of seconds, that huge rush that you get from a turbo and all of the additional drama that comes along with that. You've never been in a 90s JDM car that's turbocharged, have you, sweetie?
No.
It makes the coolest noise, honestly. Your little sister was in JM Celica GT4 and there's so much drama with a turbo. So you don't get that with this car, but in a minute we'll try it again. We'll pull over and try a controlled sort of 0 to 60. Right, let's go around this roundabout and check what the steering's like, shall we?
Then we get a magazine.
Ready, yeah, and then we're gonna go to the shop. Oh!
My seat was when you did that.
This is lovely. I'm really enjoying this. Did it?
Yeah.
Right, here we go. Oh! Oh no, honestly, it's got ample performance. Right, look, let's pull over and we'll do it one more time, sweetie. Just pull over here on our usual little spot. Right, sweetie, you ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Wow.
Oi! See, I really do love the high revving, naturally aspirated nature of JDM cars as well. Look, going back to my MR2, I really enjoy driving that car. Wasn't particularly fast, but it's a lovely thing to rev out. And look, if you're worried about buying a Supra because the only one you can afford is a naturally aspirated one, look, take it from me, I would happily own a naturally aspirated Supra after driving this already. All right, sweetie, roundabout. I tell you what, I was expecting this to feel much more like a GT car. I think that's because I had, in my 20s, I had a 3000 GT, you know, Mitsubishi GTO twin turbo. That's what I had, a manual one. And that car to me, going from the MR2 to the 3000 GT, there's a big notable difference. Going from a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive sports car, two-seater, to that which felt like a proper GT. It still feels very different. Whereas this, driving this now, it feels much more sporty than what I was expecting. A lot more sporty. Very well planted on the roads going around those roundabouts as well. Oh, this is incredible. And obviously it's not just the interior which is really special with the Supra, it's the looks, isn't it? The iconic looks of this car. If you just see a side profile picture just showing the cut of the lines of a Mk4 Supra, it's undeniable. You know at a glance exactly what it is. And it's just got so much presence, this car. I mean, it's back in the day, this was huge. I mean, it's a little over 4.5 meters long and a little over 1.8 meters wide, which honestly back in the 90s was crazy. You know, if you had one of these behind you in your little hatchback, you felt like you were being stalked by a great white shark. Like the presence that the Supra had on the road back in the day was incredible. But I still think it carries forth a lot of that presence today, even though, you know, every other car on the road now seems to be a Tesla Model Y, which is much bigger than this. You know, it still has that lovely low down, big, long, wide feel, that huge bonnet. So back in the day, this car, an absolute legend. But I think over the years to the present day, that legend status has only swelled and grown. I mean, for me,
it was Gran Turismo on a PlayStation 1, the original Gran Turismo. That's why me, my brother, my friends loved the Supra and all of these cars so much. But it's obviously Fast and Furious as well, isn't it? That's the big mainstream appeal. That's why you see young children now who will recognise a Supra. I had one earlier on today pointing out. I can see him saying Supra. So I do really believe that this is one of the most iconic cars of my generation, which is why it's such a tragedy to me that Toyota never made another Supra. You know, the Supra so deserved to have a proper successor from the ground up. And this is a really rare example of where I'd actually be in favour of the new version of the Supra having bigger dimensions than this one. You know, I think that they should have made one which, you know, was kind of like DB11, DB12 proportions. Big, long, wide, stacks of presence, like ultra desirability. You know, if you see one go past on the road, it just takes your breath away. Like, that's the way I feel like they should have gone, from the ground up, nut and bolt, new car. I'm about as interested in the current generation Supra, you know, that two-seater thing which is made in conjunction with the Z4. I'm about as interested in that as I am if, you know, the person who owns the rights to Elvis Presley's back catalogue suddenly released a new album which was all songs made by him using AI generated technology. Honestly, you can just keep it. I'm not interested at all. It's a real shame in my eyes to just use a name without too much effort to just make some money. The other frustrating thing with Toyota is that they never made another MR2. I really feel like the world needed another affordable mid-engine rear-wheel drive two-seater sports car. Although I did really enjoy driving and making the review on the GR Yaris, I think that's brilliant. I'd really love to check out GR86. I'd love to see what those rear seats are like. Hopefully they'll be more usable than these. So now you're thinking, nice car, what's the retail on one of those? More than you can afford, pal. Well, to be honest, more than I can afford as well. I mean, my next car needs to be sub 20 grand, and, you know, I'd struggle to get a nice Supra with a manual gearbox naturally aspirated for sub £20,000. I've always kept an eye on the Supra market, and it seems like, you know, even for the most undesirable automatic naturally aspirated cars, you know, asking prices are around £20,000. If you want a manual natural aspirated car, it's going to be asking price between £20,000 and £30,000. But if you want the holy grail, a twin turbocharged manual, I mean, prices start from £40,000, which is a lot of money, isn't it? So, sweetie, what do you think of sitting in this car compared to sitting in Daddy's Aston Martin?
Well, there's not as much leather.
Yeah, there's not as much leather in here, is there? Like, look, here's the crazy thing. That Supra values are the same as Aston Martin DB9 values. If you told me that back when I was in my early 20s, that I own an Aston Martin DB9 right now, and I'm selling it, but if I was to sell it and then want to get a Supra, they're pretty much the same money. You know, for the early, tired DB9 cars with some issues, you know, they do start from low 20s. And you can get yourself a really nice DB9 for, you know, around £40,000. So it's quite crazy, isn't it? Funny thing is, though, it'd be a much easier thing for you to buy a nice example of a DB9 today than a Supra. You know, you might be waiting 6 months for the right Supra to pop up, whereas there's, you know, always a handful of nice DB9s out there to buy, and that's part of the problem with the Supra as well, and any JDM car from the 90s. You know, they were owned by people like me, my brother, my friends, back when in our early 20s when we had no money. We barely scraped the money together to afford to buy one, and then we sort of ran them around and couldn't really afford to properly maintain them. And obviously the Supra, like many cars, is susceptible to rust. And if it gets too bad on the underside, I mean, it's past the point of saving. Right, let's go around another roundabout. You ready? Oh, this is a really nice thing. This is so lovely to drive. Oh. Also, a lot of them over the years have been heavily modified. Which brings me on to one thing that I don't like about this particular car that I'm driving here today. I don't like that bumper. But sadly, that's the case with most Supras that you see. When you see them come up, they've got crazy body kits all over them. The interiors have been sprayed all sorts of different colours, and Oh, you know, I'm such an OEM guy. Now, to be fair, a completely stock Supra does look very dated today. It rides quite high, and the wheels are comically small and look completely disproportionate to the rest of the car. But I really like the cars that have been modded really subtly, so you know they almost look standard. They've got some nice wheels. These wheels, I think, on this car look really good actually. But yeah, just keep it subtle, because when it goes too crazy with crazy body kits and stuff, for me, they start looking like a Supra in Grand Theft Auto. You know, so it's so different that Rockstar couldn't get sued because they didn't have the rights to actually include the Supra in the game. And to me, then, you know, the core, beautiful design of the Supra is lost. As we go around another roundabout, oh, this is fantastic. God, I love this car so much. Honestly, the steering is delightful. It feels fast and precise. The throttle response is incredible. It gives you some feedback. You can feel it's connected to this car. Very lovely analog feeling car. The clutch is lovely to use, really intuitive. And the gearbox is a delight as well. A nice short throw. Oh, this car has also got a modified exhaust. And forgive me, I've forgotten what James told me, so I'll put it in the comments below. But it sounds really good to me without being too loud. What do you think, sweetie? Do you think it sounds too loud? Look, let's have a look.
Okay.
What do you think?
Okay.
It's all right? Yeah.
Because I think it'd be too loud on the outside.
Yeah, you reckon on the outside it might be too loud? And I need to say a massive thank you to my friend James, who I met since starting the channel, for letting us have another one of his cars. We also did his Mustang Mk4, which we really enjoyed, didn't we, sweetie?
Yeah.
But James has also got his own YouTube channel, Driven Flawed, where if you want to know more about this car, I highly recommend you head over to the Driven Flawed channel and give him a subscribe as well. He's a father of 6 children, a proper dadcarist. So the big question is the Mk4 Supra still a usable dad car today? Well, I think the biggest problem is finding a good one, because if you find one, chances are you're going to need to spend thousands on sort of restoring it and treating rust, respraying it potentially, things like that. And I can imagine once you've got a car like that, which is then quite valuable, you might be a little bit precious about putting loads of miles on it. So potentially the Supra would have to be like a second car now. And the other thing as well, like that I didn't know until today, is the issues with those rear seats. I would love to hear if anybody out there has got child seats that fit in the back really well. Please let me know in the comments below, or send me a message on Instagram, dadcars88. Because if I could get, for example, a 3-across multi-mac, sweetie, in the back, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we've got enough room, but the seats are a bit like downy bit.
I know, we might have to do a little bit of modification, but if I could safely get a 3-across multi-back seat in the back, I wouldn't rule out me buying a Mk4 Supra. And I would probably go for one which is a little bit rough around the edges, just so that it feels like a much more usable thing. And I wouldn't feel so precious about it, because they are so valuable now, aren't they? The other consideration as well with a Supra as a dad car is, obviously the safety. I can't see any airbag logos in this car, and yeah, look, depends how many miles a year you're going to be doing in it with your children on board, but look, I'd be happy to run this as a dad car, if we just use it special occasions with the children, good weather conditions. If anyone out there has memories of them being a kid in the back of a Mk4 Supra, you've got to let us know in the comments below. I'd love to hear that. Or if anyone out there is running one of these today as a dad car, I'd love to hear from you. So in summary then, for the Mk4 Supra, does it deserve its legendary status? Does it deserve the price that people pay for these today? Well, I think 100% yes. Driving it today, honestly, I would tell you if driving this didn't feel as special as it did back in my early 20s, but it really does. If anything, my love for these cars has only grown over time. And if you're somebody who's always had the Mk4 Supra on your bucket list and you haven't bought one yet, because every time you go to the classifieds, you know, for your budget, you could only afford an automatic, or you couldn't afford a turbocharged manual car and you think it needs to be the holy grail, honestly, don't let the opportunity pass you by. If you could afford a car like this, a manual gearbox, naturally aspirated, and it's up at a price that you can afford, don't miss the opportunity to experience owning this legendary car. Look, I want to say thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you check out the review I did on JM on Cars Celica GT4. You will not believe how much more usable the rear seats are in the Celica than the Mk4 Supra. And I hope you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you soon. Take care, guys. Bye bye.